From the vacation capital of the world, it's the Nick Carioti Show.
So when you purchase or sell your home, you definitely want to surround yourself with the most competent people possible. And one aspect of this is the title company that closes your transaction. And as a buyer or seller, you can choose your own title company. You're not stuck with whatever they give you or whatever somebody else is choosing. You can choose your own. Now, as a 13-year title industry veteran and CEO of Your Title Connection, Jessica Nazario has set her company apart from all the other competition. Offering A-plus service to every client she works with, she has established a loyal clientele and has become a household name in the community. She is also currently a member of the Dr. Phillips and Metro West Chamber of Commerce as well. We're happy to have Jessica Nazario as our guest today. Thanks for joining us, Jessica. How are you?
Yes, good. How about yourself?
Wonderful, wonderful. Very happy to have you on the show. We've got some great information we want to share with our listeners, and I know you're the gal to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So now, Jessica, I remember, or I mentioned earlier that you've been in the industry for 13 years, correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right, very good. And one of the things I'd like our listeners to learn today is how important it really is to choose the right title company to close their transaction. I think a lot of people out there don't even know that a title company is actually a title insurance company, and the client is purchasing an actual insurance policy, correct?
That is right, yes.
All right, real good. Now, so for our listeners who may not know what you do and how it actually works, why don't you give them a little bit of an overview of your business and what you're actually doing?
Sure, absolutely. Well, basically, title insurance is the policy of insurance that protects the buyer from any loss resulting from defect in the title. That's basically a definition, but just to give you a little bit overview of that, basically when a real estate transaction takes place, we as a title company have to perform a search and an examination of the seller together with the property being sold. That search let us know any issues on the title that need to be cleared before closing takes place. For example, any liens, any mortgages, any debts, any HOA debts that the client might have, so that when we sell the property, the buyer receives a clean, what we call a clean title policy, and there's no issues at the end.
Okay, so they're looking for a clean, marketable title, something where they don't have to worry that something's going to come back later and bite them in the back over something the seller originally was responsible for, correct?
That is absolutely right.
Okay,
absolutely right.
So if they didn't pay their property taxes for the last couple of years and nothing else was done, that's going to be an issue there at closing. If they had a pool built or something like that and there was a lien on there because they didn't pay the bill, that's going to be on there. A forged deed, perhaps, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we as a title company, we have to clear all that. If for some reason the title company did not clear any of that and the closing took place and the property was sold and, I don't know, maybe something happened a month later, then we are responsible. Then that's why it's important to have that title insurance so that client can come back to the title insurance company and say, hey, you missed to pay the taxes or you missed this at closing, right. Then the client is protected. All
right, real good. And is there, by the way, like a maximum amount or a standard amount of money that it's insured up to, or does that change depending on the price of the home?
It depends on the price. That is correct.
All right, real good. Now, being in the industry, you and I both know how important it is to buy title insurance. But why don't you tell our listeners a little bit why it's so important?
Well, it is important because the way I explain it to clients so they understand what type of policy it is, because it's not like the normal home estate tax. I'm sorry, the insurance.
Sure.
Basically, it works that it is purchased and it covers you from the moment that you purchase that property, and actually it helps you from the time that you're purchasing that property, but it covers you also from what happened before. So let's say, for example, like we just mentioned, you purchase a property today, and I don't know, 3 months later you realize that, you get a bill from the taxes. Then it protects you from what happened before, but it protects you from that time on, basically. So if you own the property for 20 years, it protects you for that long, and it's a one-time shot. You don't have to purchase title insurance again. It protects you from all that time.
Okay, so it is a one-time fee. That was actually one of my questions.
That is correct.
Okay,
very
good.
Correct.
And now, I know that title insurance is not mandatory in the state of Florida, which, they can't force you to buy insurance. I understand that. But, and I know we have some basic rules of thumb to prevent people from not buying it, such as, making it the seller's responsibility to pay the owner's title insurance. That way, the buyer doesn't really have a say not to, that type of thing. But that could be renegotiated, and we could still have problems, obviously. But from what I understand, the lender also has a policy in place, correct?
That is correct. Yes, if the buyer is purchasing with finance transaction, that is correct, and they will not. In easy ways, the lender will not close unless they have that policy because they need to cover themselves as well.
Sure,
Yes.
sure. Because if there's no policy in effect then for the owner and then something comes up later on, then they're at risk, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
All right. Now, have you had clients over the years who have actually refused to buy title insurance, maybe just to save a little money?
Yes, and I have maybe a few because they're foreign buyers,
right,
and they don't know the rules because of their where they live. They do transactions differently.
Sure.
But I actually sit down with them and explain to them the importance. And actually, title companies are. For me to do a transaction without a policy, I'm not allowed to do that.
Okay.
That is actually, I think that some attorneys, but I don't know exactly the rules, but some attorneys are allowed to do that, but they don't even do it either because it's just not safe. It's not safe for the client.
Sure, exactly right. And I would imagine that there are disclosures that they would have to get and possibly even initial or sign that would state that they're refusing it, that type of thing.
Exactly. So the attorney is not liable or the title company is not liable for that. That is absolutely correct.
Sure. And speaking of money, what are some of the costs that are associated with your services? How does that actually work?
Well, like you said earlier, there are some that are based on the sales price. So, it's really going to depend. And actually, there are other fees that very depend on the type of transaction. Let's say that is a cash deal. So a cash deal, the fees are going to be way less than it's going to be a finance transaction. So I really cannot go in detail of how much would that be. But there are limited fees also that we are allowed to charge as title companies.
Right.
It's only for the services that we're providing to the client, and they're just a few fees that we are allowed to charge.
Right,
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah, of course. It's going to vary from transaction to transaction.
Absolutely, that's right.
And from what I understand, your business, your industry is very restricted on how much you can charge and what you can charge for, correct?
Mm-hmm, that is right. We have certain maximums that we're allowed to charge, and we cannot go over that because we are regulated by certain industries and also by our underwriter, because we have an underwriter. I call it that's our boss. I mean, without an underwriter in the state of Florida, you are not allowed to handle transactions.
Right. I understand. Yeah, it's just as an insurance agent out there would be under one, and I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I understand, there's only a couple of really big ones in the state that actually handle this, correct?
Right. There's only a few. I mean, let's say we can count them with our fingers.
Right. Okay. Very good. Now, as you've heard me say before, I always advise my clients to utilize a title company rather than an attorney because it can be done either way. Now, that might sound a little strange, I think, to some buyers out there, but you and I know why. And could you tell our listeners a little bit about why what you do kind of stays more focused on what we need rather than an attorney?
Exactly. Well, basically, in many ways, the title companies are more flexible than attorneys when it comes to the process of the closing, especially when it comes to fees. I mean, attorneys usually they're a little higher when it comes to fees and charging. And also, the other reason why is because a lot of attorneys don't have that much experience in the title business. And let me explain a little bit. Even though they're allowed to do closings and to handle transactions, they actually perform other different legal areas, let's say bankruptcy, foreclosures and all those good things, but they're actually not experts when it comes to the title industry. I actually have two attorney friends of mine that they call me sometimes to ask me questions about title because I've been in the business for 14 years.
Sure.
And I'm, happy to help them because they're attorney friends of mine. But honestly, a lot of the attorneys, they just, they do so many different things and they don't concentrate in title like we do in the title business, which is all we do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. That's exactly right. That is all you do. And of course, you're going to be an expert in that particular thing. And I think a lot of consumers don't think about that. They don't realize what's going on. They think they're going to get the best service from an attorney. But it's funny because I often call attorneys deal breakers, not because it's true though, but not because they're bad at what they do, but rather that they do too much. They dig so deep and they kind of scare the client, they scare the buyer, they scare the seller, and the deal often falls apart because of the fear that's being instilled in them.
That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true.
Yeah, and I understand. Attorneys are constantly trying to work their way back into this part of the industry that your company and similar companies have really taken control of. And I've even seen where they try to reduce their fees and such. But again, we just don't like the risk. When I get a call from a client who's from up north, or we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because in places like New York and such and up north, it's mandatory to use an attorney. Correct? Right.
That is absolutely correct.
Right. So we deal with a lot of clients from those areas. And when I know that I have a client from an area like that, I know my guard's got to be up. I know that there's a 50-50 shot this deal can fall apart. So we got to be right on top of that. We got to make sure that people are not getting nervous, not getting scared. And I'll often even explain to the clients, be ready for this. I want you to understand what to expect, because what you're going to be hearing, it might sound a little scary,
No, but and you're right. And another thing that I do when situations like that, if I get a realtor calling and say, "Hey, Jessica, I have an attorney that is going to be handling the buyer side. You need to send the documents to them," which I'm very happy to do. So that's not a problem. Right. I always tell the client, because they come here, they don't know exactly what's going on. Always go to my website, find out about me, find out, we all as title company, I'm a title agent and I have an agency as well. So I have few licenses going on. So they can actually feel comfortable with us as a title company, because they don't know who Jessica is. They don't know who your title connection is. You know what I'm saying? So sure. I actually always advise them to go into our website. I give them sometimes, not very often, but they want to know who my underwriter is, which is the fund with Old Republic. They've been in the business for, I don't know, many, many, many years. Sure. And I even have to sometimes give them the information of them so they can call them and they can verify that we are a title company and that we have our licenses and everything in place. So sure. It happens, but we actually cover, because for some reason, if I forget to pay a fee when I want my insurance, which I have like many insurances to be able to have the title company, then, they will just cut me off and I won't be able to do any business. But sure. Everything has to be in place, and I always advise them if they need that information that I'll be able to provide it to them so they feel comfortable.
Very good. Yeah. And the fact that you're actually registered in a licensed industry with some really strong regulatory bodies over you, they've got to feel comfortable, because there are repercussions, and then they know that they can go over your head if they needed to. So just like our industry as well, it keeps us on the ball knowing that we have these regulatory bodies. We're watching
exactly.
ourselves.
They can always go online. These days where technology is so available for everyone, they can just go in there and see if my license is active or not. I mean, It's as simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. Just like in real estate. Very good.